All right, well, we'll just go ahead and get started. Welcome to another episode scheduled webinar. This one is entitled From Owner Operator to Practice Owner, Getting Your Time, Energy, and Life Back. And isn't that just something so very important? Time, energy, and life as we pursue our goals and run a practice and ensure that practice is profitable, viable and constantly growing. So that's going to be our discussion and focus point for today. And as always, right now I have a long-standing consultant who's worked with thousands of practices across the country in various different industries, and that is Mr. Dave McKevitt. So again, thank you, Dave, for being here.
Thank you, Julia. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're going to get some wise words from Dave, as I like to call it. Great. So let's go ahead and get started. And, kind of the first topic or area of discussion is most owners don't burn out because of their profession, right? They burn out because they're running everything else. And so I wanted you to go ahead and talk about what that everything else is and how owners can not burn out.
Yeah, I think many owners have this conceptual understanding, but many do not. We find that many do not. You can look at any organized activity, very much including your office, as having three major echelons of function. And the one at the top is what would be called the goal finder. That is you, the owner, if you're an owner. You are the goal finder. You're the one that establishes the goals of the practice. You have the goal of having a practice to start with. And you set the direction, where we're going, because it's your practice. Then the second echelon below that one is the role of management. Different function than goal finder. They're not the same thing. And that would ideally be handled by an office manager, and if you're big enough, perhaps a management team with some middle management people also. And below that echelon is the group itself, getting the jobs done that need to be done. In that group, by the way, the doctor owner also fits. He is part of the group getting the job done. It is a separate hat, obviously, than your owner hat. And definitely also a separate hat than the management hat. Many owners come to us wearing all three of those hats to varying degrees. Even if they have a so-called office manager, they're very often wearing a lot of the management hat themselves. And that spreads you pretty thin. You are buttered across those three functions. That's a tough road to hoe. It truly is. That's why you really need to have a very well-established management function, and you need to know very clearly what your role and function is as the owner, as the goal finder. It's a leadership hat. It's not a micromanage hat. It's not run around handling everything hat. It's not being the guy that replaces the light bulbs, who calls the guy to mow the lawn. No. You are the goal finder, and then you're busy being the doctor. And that's where you need to have your attention focus. And you can only do that if you have a well-organized office overall, obviously. But the main linchpin in pulling that off is having a well-established, a well-trained office manager who knows what he or she is doing to organize the rest of the scene and guide the group in the actual accomplishment of the goals that you have established in your role as the goal finder. So you need to understand that concept. And you have to understand that you don't need to be doing all of it. And you need to know how to wear that, what that owner hat is and how to wear it. And then, of course, we don't train you how to be doctors, obviously, but you know that.
Yeah. Very, very valuable points. And, I think what I've experienced with owners and when working with clients is that they're so hesitant to give up control in areas. They're so hesitant to designate certain things with fear of that, well, only I can get things done and things will only get done the right way if I do them. And, that's handling staff and I don't have an office manager or an executive team that properly can handle or get things done, right? And which could very well be the case, right? But I think the biggest failure point is they cope. They don't do anything about it. They think that that's just the way it is, and it's just not. And people can be trained, and your office manager absolutely needs to be well trained. And I think that's where we begin to see offices and practices that we work with take off, is that the owner can remove himself or themself or herself from that day-to-day constant overwhelm of daily tasks to do, put the OM, and then they can think in futures, right? They can go to what's next, because we know universally things are only contracting or they're growing, expanding. And so if the owner doesn't have their attention pushed out into the future and lead the group into futures, well, then your practice is absolutely contracting, right? And that's easier said than done. And that's a systematic point that has to go into your practice. So yeah, very, very valuable points there on the owner.
Well, and you just used a really important word, systematic. I mean, systematic means systems. And the way we approach the process of accomplishing this is we've designed 6 major systems, and they're supported by 6 auxiliary systems that are very well defined, that describe and assist the implementation of the major functionalities in any organization that have to be there if the organization is firing on all cylinders. And when the owner doctor is involved in a lot, I mean, you will be involved in all of them to some degree or another, because they all integrate. But if you're the one doing the legwork on all of them, you'll absolutely burn out. And if you're micromanaging, which means basically you don't trust the people below you to do the job, that's the only reason you would micromanage. You got to find people you can trust. So finding the right people is a part of the process. And then delegating things to them and really delegating them. And that takes courage. We understand that. It takes a frightening level of courage to trust people with things that are really important, that you know can make mistakes or be incompetent. So, you're passing hats that you wear. And in our lingo, there's a big difference between passing a hat and dumping a hat. If you dump it, here you go, dude. Okay, I got it, I think. And then you are going to be pulled into micromanaging, because you're having to feel the mistakes and the ineptitude that you have going on under you. But if you really pass the hat, which is a very specific process, you lay it out. It does take time to do this. It's not a magic wand. It doesn't happen overnight. But bit by bit, you do this, and you put these hats on people that you trust at least their intentions and that they can be reasonably competent. They'll make mistakes, but you've got to go through the process and let them make mistakes and learn. They will, if you have the right people, willing people.
Yeah.
They can be evolved into something that you can ultimately trust, and you'll have a team that's kick-ass and productive and efficient and love their jobs and have high morale.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the level of having enough patience that and willingness to let people make mistakes, right? And not, we hear, well, she forgot. Okay. I mean, crap, I forget. I mean, I'm a pretty competent and productive individual, but I forget. I don't update something correctly. I need to be corrected. I need to be shown policy again. I need to be shown procedures again. And what I have found is owners sometimes, or even managers, and when they're managing, they back off at that point. Oh, just fire them. You're like, oh, great. Well, um, this day and age, the hiring process, as I'm sure all of you know as owners, is tedious. It's long. And when you get the right person, the willing person, they can and will be trained. But and I think this may be a little harsh, but I think owners lose sight that maybe it's their training and it's not the person or lack thereof. Right? Maybe they don't have a full personnel system that handles the personnel, understands, identifies their products, identifies their exact job duties, identifies, how to train them and training them properly and gradiently so that they actually become competent within the practice. I think very few times, degrees or not, when someone enters a role, that they won't need training.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I even had a long-time client, actually, that I spoke to this week, who's trying to pass more of the executive hat to a certain individual and is frustrated because the individual is not taking on parts of the hat that he would like this person to take on. But digging into it, and this is where a consultant can come in also in analyzing this problem. Part of it is because the proper procedure of a hat pass has not been followed. The exact functions that he wants this person to take on have not been written down. This is what you do. This is how you do it. Here's a checklist of things I need you to do. It might be a checklist against days of the week. You might have a monthly checklist. You might have a quarterly checklist. I mean, these things help pass the hat. The one doing it, you do them because you've been doing it for a long time and you've internalized it. And even you will forget oh yeah, that's right. It's the end of the quarter. I need to check with my accountant or whatever it might be. Make sure the quarterlies are paid, etc. But if you don't take what's in your head when you're delegating things and put it from your head onto a piece of paper so that you can properly pass it to somebody, and you've got that as the standard to train against, you're going to more often than not find yourself being frustrated with the fact that the person's not taking on what you want them to take on.
Right. And I think that for sure just goes hand in hand with time, right? I need someone to do this, yet I'm not willing to give it up, right? I spend all my time doing A, but I'm not yet willing to give it up. Or I told them once or twice, which becomes not the correct pass, right? And we know from experience, right, that you will forever hold on to these duties if you don't ever pass the hat.
Right? Yeah, and the other part of that is right next to that is, of course, you want to maintain control. It is your practice. It is your baby. And you don't want to lose control. Well, when you pass a hat, you're not really giving up control. You're giving up functions, but you maintain your control because you have to have systems in place where you can monitor how things are being done. Your systems for monitoring things are, number one, having statistics. If statistics are in a good range in various aspects of the practice, you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to put a lot of attention on it. A second thing is if you find yourself being hit with traffic willy-nilly that you don't want to be hit with, that obviously means there's some poor functionality below you. Then you have to maybe go in and retrain or correct, or more profitably and properly have an office manager who would handle that for you. That's part of the huge value of having an office manager.
Yeah.
So that you have somebody to handle that training and correction and, if necessary, discipline for you, so that that's not something that shows back on your plate.
Right, and there's many factors well, I would say not many, but a few factors that go into the office manager aspect, right? I think sometimes not think, but I know sometimes owners, well, I don't think I have the right person, right? Which very much could be, right? And so you continue to do things yourself. And sometimes the right person is in the practice that we have found, right? They just need to be plucked out and they need to kind of let their wings spread and kind of let them fly because they have a willingness to be there and a willingness to be trained. And sometimes, yeah, you need to go get one, but the value behind a practice manager is priceless. With a properly trained practice manager. Now, we have run into some situations where the practice manager can be a large part of the problem. So it is very important that they are properly trained and um, in essence, that's where we come in and we've trained thousands of office manager over the course of 40 plus years to run effective practices. And so good. So let's get into problems that keep reappearing because this is when we are starting with owners as they're getting to know us and familiarize themselves with us, this is something that, I mean, the same thing just keeps happening over and over. I can't get Betty Joe to do this one thing. And so where does that come from and what is the solution?
It's not rocket science to use a cliche. You have to train people. I've had clients over the years, many over the years, give me that refrain. They won't do what I tell them to do. They won't do what I tell them to do. Okay, well, number one, is it in writing? Okay, if it's in writing, is it adequately in writing? I've had clients tell me that they had things in writing and they send me a copy, and I would have a hard time translating that into effective application because the person writing it is writing it from the viewpoint of I know how to do it, as opposed to I need to communicate to somebody who doesn't know how to do it and appreciate their viewpoint as they're receiving this information. And then you have to ensure that they understand it, discuss it with them, make sure they don't have any words in what you've written that they don't know the meaning of. That could be a major derailment of people. And you'd be surprised at some of the words that people don't know the meaning of. It's becoming more and more of a problem. It's more of a problem now than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I guarantee you. People don't know a lot of words that you and I take for granted. And then you have to be able to and willing to take the time to drill them on it. Yes, it takes time, and you don't have any time. But the thing is, you have to look at that expenditure of time as, yes, I'm not producing right now, I'm training. I can't afford that. I need to produce. That training time, if you're doing it well and you're doing it effectively, is an investment in future production. You'll be more productive, more efficiently if you train than if you don't. And sometimes the demands for production are so intense that doctors don't make that time. Now, you're not going to handle everything overnight. That's the other thing to keep in mind. And Julia, you nodded toward this in a comment you made a little bit ago. You have to cope. Constantly you have to cope, but you also have to bit by bit organize. Because if you keep coping, you will drown.
And define in that because it's a datum that I use all the time because it becomes so evident when we start working with practice owners. Um, but when you're talking about organize, can you just define that, get a little more specific for them on what that is?
Absolutely. Organize means that you have specific people wearing specific hats, if you will, and that they know what they're supposed to do, and the flow lines and the communication lines between them and what travels on them and how it travels and when it travels is all very well defined, which it ties into the second major piece besides having the people and the channels in place, is you have procedures in place. the sequence of steps to take when you run into something. You're in the back being the doctor, and somebody runs in and says, Billy Bob is 25 minutes late. Can you squeeze him in? Well, you don't need that question hitting you when you're in the middle of doing a root canal, or a surgery of some kind. Yeah, please, there should be a procedure laid out for that in writing. I don't know exactly it would be, but it might be something like, okay, if they get here within 10 minutes of their appointment, we will fit them in. 10 to 20, okay, come back and check with the clinical director. Do not interrupt the doctor. After 20, I'm sorry, our policy, and of course, make sure that you communicate this policy to patients going in. After 20 minutes, I'm sorry, at this point, we can't see you today because it's going to throw the rest of the day off for everybody else, and so we're going to have to reschedule you. Anyway, there are ways. The point is there are policies and procedures in place that people are trained on. If they don't follow them, they're corrected on. But that's the way you pass the hat, so that you're not constantly having these things roll up and slap you upside the head.
Right.
So
yeah, and then you've touched on systems, and I touched on systems a little bit, and obviously this is about specifically owners getting time, energy back, right? Not losing control, being able to, be an owner and not a worker. I say that slightingly, but I don't mean it that way, So in terms of systems, what systems actually allow a practice to run without constant doctor intervention?
Well, of the 6 systems that we have in our lineup, the 6 major systems, primarily, we kind of touched on that at the beginning, there's the owner system. You need to know what the owner system is, and you need to know what that hat is so you stay in your lane on that hat. And then there's the there's the management system, the executive system. That's the word we actually use for the system, the executive system. That is for the implementation of the guidance from the owner. And so that one's got to be well established. And then right below that is the personnel system, which dovetails with the executive system. That's making sure that the individual staff members have the guidance they need, the job descriptions, the policies, the procedures, the flow lines, everything laid out. So that you've laid out, ideally in writing properly, what you could call the ideal scene or the ideal functionality of your office. If it departs from the proper functionality, it's on the office manager to deal with that. Now, if the office manager doesn't do it, then you, of course, have to deal with the office manager. So creating these things is important. But back, as I say, this is not an overnight thing. You cope, you deal with all the stuff, and you pick maybe one thing that you're going to nail down. Okay, now I've got that nailed down. There's a little bit less coping necessary at this point. Pick the next little issue that keeps slapping you upside the head and nail that one down with a written policy, procedure, training, drilling, and with a willing people, with a willing staff. And bit by bit, you start putting this order in. But mainly who's doing that is your office manager under your guidance, doing that. But to maintain your control, you've got your statistics you're looking at, and you also have regular meetings with your office manager, so you're getting information from the office manager. And you also, thirdly, have the perception. Earlier I mentioned the second one, the perception of you're being hit by stuff you shouldn't be hit by. If you're being hit by stuff you shouldn't be hit by, the answer is not, oh my God, I have to do it all. That would be actually apathy. If you want to be real blunt with yourself, you're being apathetic about your ability to create and organize and manage an organization. That's an indicator that some more training and maybe procedural documents need to be created. That's all we need to do. Bit by bit, you keep putting more and more order in, and then you have passed all these hats. Not dump them, but past them.
Right. Yeah. Three very important systems, more, in just the efficiency and being able to be the owner, because it's tough when you're all three. And I think anyone who's ever been all three, or, in the day-to-day functions, that's when the burnout starts to occur. Right. And again, just going back to, it's not the profession, it's just the way in which your practice is set up and organized, or lack of organization and things of that nature. um so go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So in terms of sustainable ownership in today's landscape, um you know uh, I think one of the I guess I like the term, I know one of the points that seems to be coming up more often than, say, 5, 6 or so years ago is, how do I say this? Kind of lack of motivation within staff, right? Lack of really owning their position and wanting to produce for the practice. And I think that ties a lot into sustainable ownership, right? Just you have to have staff who are motivated and moving and grooving and wanting to be there. And so what within the systems, what is the solution for that, or what tools or resources do the doctors or the owners have?
Well, in the first place, and you've already touched on this, you want to make sure that any staff member has a very clear understanding of exactly what they're supposed to be producing. They got all these different things that they do. What is the intended end result, or more than one of the things that they do? They need to have a very clear understanding of what they're there to produce. They're not there to be busy. They're there to produce specific things that contribute to the overall productivity of the practice. You have to have a very clear understanding of that. You have to know how to do that, how to accomplish those, or achieve those products. And the mechanisms have to be in place for correction to occur rapidly. So you nip things in the bud. You don't let them drift. Oh, she flubbed again. Gosh darn, I hope she gets it right tomorrow. Don't do that. You gotta jump on it very quickly. Again, it's time. I know. But it's time which, if you do that, you're going to bring people along into the right direction, and you're not going to be feeling like you're herding cats. And also, you have to be willing to let go of people who are proving that they just are not trainable. Of course, you gotta really give the proper yeoman's effort to train them before you draw that conclusion. You can't dump your hat and they don't pick it up properly and say they're not trainable. Well, yeah, they didn't get trained. They got heaped upon. They got thrown in the water. Here, I'm going to teach you how to swim. John Wayne, you don't know how to swim? Roll in the river. Well, some people can manage that. When I was a little kid, that didn't work very well. But you have to, if you really determine that they're not trainable, then you can't hold on to them. Because if you do, frankly, that's going to have a very depressing impact on not just you, but the rest of your staff.
Right.
So that's a piece of it. I mean, there are a lot of pieces that again, these systems integrate. They work together. They integrate. The owner system, the executive system, the personnel system, the sales system, the marketing system, the finance. All these work together. And the more of an understanding you have of these systems, very analogously to the way you have an understanding of the way the human body works or the animal bodies work. Those are systems, and you need to know how how all the systems integrate and interact, and then you can do something effective about it. So you have to get the right people in there, people who are genuinely willing. That's a primary thing. They want to be good. They want to make you happy. And you can more often than not work with that. So am I answering your question, Julia?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things to know is that it's not if those systems exist in your practice, they do exist. That is what a practice is made up of. It's the awareness factor and the education surrounding them that leads one to what we're talking about here, right? More time, more energy. You are the owner. You can put your attention and build the future of the practice. There is a sustainable and viable exit plan that you feel good about, and so that is the important part, is that it's not whether or not they're there. They are there. We know that. It's what you do with them, right? And the other point, just touch on, right, and we've been talking a lot about training staff, and it's just, kind of the bread and butter to how your practice is going to run, because your practice is made up of people, right? The systems are there and they're made up of people, a lot of them, right? You have flows and educational materials and things. And when we're talking, that you kind of have two options with your people when we're talking about training, right? You can train them, which is a lot of time, but it needs to be done, or you can get them trained, right, by a organization like ours or whatnot. But they need to be trained for sure. So I'd leave it with that. Is there any lasting words there before we open it up to the chat for any questions that?
No, I think you've stated it well. Uh, I think we're good.
Excellent. Well, I also want to let everyone know that we do also offer completely free a free practice analysis with our senior consultant. I'm putting the link here for you. This is it's a 3 to 4 1-hour calls, right? There's no bait and switch here. It's very much taking a deep dive into your practice, uncovering some situations. I'm sure there are some situations that you could potentially use help with, or just want to talk to somebody about. And then uncovering the real why, because when you uncover and discover the real why, you can enter in a solution that will actually work. So you would just go ahead and fill out that form, and I would contact you and schedule you with our senior analyst. He's been doing this for 30 plus years. His name is Alan A.J. Jackson. So yeah, and then we'll go ahead and take any questions anyone has. Just give people a moment. Happy New Year to you all. No? Okay. Doesn't look like we have any questions today. But very much, Dave, I'm going to give you a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for being here, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Have fun storming the castle.